Was it good?
Actually, I'll use my name and address.
Yep.
It's easy.
Talk about whatever you want to. You can just put it right back up there in case somebody else wants to sign. Thank you. And don't steal our pen now.
Oh, come on, I need one bad.
You almost got it.
Oh, do you really? Okay, here you go.
How much money do you have?
It took me a year to remember her now. Yeah, she is. She really is. She's actually probably too nice to work here.
You? I just want to get that.
Did you get the commissioner feedback?
Say hi.
Did you get the commissioner feedback?
Yes. Yeah, we're good on that. Don't you know it's still summer?
Information on the Gwen Way.
It was
More information than the one. You got it?
I appreciate it.
And then the other one,
I didn't say anything.
And it works.
Yeah, that's true too.
You can't do that.
No, I
How you doing?
maybe
Good.
one time.
I know, right? Are you really? Can't say so much because we all need that. Yes. Still going on.
Budweiser?
I think past Christmas. Those guys. I hope not, but I think so. That's what's in the fridge right now. So I'm happy.
This one here?
No, just in my house.
We have some. I took. Keep drinking.
We don't have orange.
No, it's not good.
We do have Snapple though.
Calories.
I left those things for you.
I put them in my.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Eat my beautiful body.
All right. Everybody set?
Yeah, we'll get the other.
I'll throw up.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Apex Town Council. This is the meeting for August the 20th, 2019. If you would, I wanted to just bring the invocation and just mention we're gathered here together tonight to make decisions on behalf of all Apex citizens. We're all blessed to be here and have the freedom in this town of Apex, in the state of North Carolina, and in this country of the United States of America. We gather here without fear of an oppressive government, without fear of speech censorship, and without fear of having our earthly possessions confiscated and our family members incarcerated unjustly. On behalf of everyone up here, we wish to thank all those who protect us daily, who keep us safe, who keep us free, and especially to those who gave of their own lives to sacrifice and secure our liberty. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all people are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among which are the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to pursue happiness. And in order to secure these rights, we the people consent to be governed by our own. So here we sit as council members, yet also citizens. May we today govern in a way that is fair and just and wise, and may we seek that wisdom from any and every source wiser than ourselves. Please join me for a few moments of silence. Thank you. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we have no presentations, we'll move straight into consent agenda. But before we start that, let me just welcome everybody here. Make sure you know we have the agenda printed packet outside on the little podium. Also, if you intend to speak tonight, you need to sign up at one of the public forum sheets over there. They're numbered, so make sure you pay attention to which one you're signing up for. Or if you're here to speak at the public forum, sign the blue sheet. Also, on the podium, there's the yellow guidelines for speaking in the public meeting. Make sure you're familiar with those before you come to the podium. The town clerk will be collecting those sheets, so if you need to sign it, do it pretty quickly. With that said, we now move to consent agenda. It's my understanding that we have one add-on item, and I'll refer to the town manager about the consent agenda that's an add-on.
Yep. Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, you have a consent agenda add-on to refund for some people that are selling cemetery plots back to the town.
Okay. Since this is an add-on, let me just ask council if there's any questions about this particular item. Okay, not hearing any, I'll consider that to be part of the consent agenda list. And I have not heard of any other item changes, so I'll ask if the council wishes to make a motion to approve the consent agenda in a single motion.
I'll make a motion. We approve.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for approving the consent agenda. Discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, that passes unanimously. I would like to say, just before we get to the regular meeting agenda, welcome back to Council Member Dozier. We did miss you a couple of meetings there, and not to point that out, but we did miss you.
Thank you.
Now moving to the regular meeting agenda setting. This is where we set our agenda for the night. I have not heard of any changes other than what's noted already in bold on the sheet. So I will ask if there are no changes suggested by council members, then I'll call for a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, the agenda is set. We go to public hearing number 1, as you can see.
Public forum, sir?
Sorry?
Public forum.
Oh, I'm sorry. I went right through public forum. Yeah, my apologies. Public forum, that's what I get for not looking at the agenda, just running full speed. So we go to public forum. Town clerk, do we have anyone signed up on the public forum sheet? All right, great. So I'll go ahead and open the public forum and we'll call you up. And just a reminder, there's 3 minutes for public. This is a time for you to speak to us. We listen while you tell us what's on your mind. And there's a red light, green light, yellow light, not in that order. I'll let you figure out which order they go in. But they'll keep you on timing. So it looks like we have one person who has signed up tonight. It is Joe Foresta. Come forward, Mr. Foresta.
Can I hand this to,
Sure, to the clerk.
I'd like, can I get you a copy?
Yeah, hand it to the clerk and she'll make sure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And please state your name and address for the record, and then you may begin.
Yeah, my name is Joe Foresta. I live in 1904 Old Raleigh Road, very close to here. And I'm the property owner downtown. I have several properties downtown. And I'd like to speak for just about 3 minutes regarding the fire station. I'm looking at potential options for that fire station. One, obviously, is removal of the fire station and replacing it with a new building, excuse me. I know the history of that property very well because I own a property across the street, and it has a blue stream line running straight through the middle of it, whether the town's aware of that or not. We still have water problems. When I built my building across the street, I had to move the footers. Next door has still running sump pumps underneath, and his neighbor also has issues. Now, Whether or not you can build a heavy building like a new fire station or not, I don't know, but it bears you looking into before you get too far on. The other option is to rehab the existing building as a fire station, and I think we all know that's pretty expensive from what I understand, but it is an option. The other option is to sell the fire station, possibly for rehab, possibly as an historical site. It is old enough to qualify for an historical site, and I think it ought to be considered. If you do that, you can sell the fire station for somebody to develop as an historical site. If that happens, you would have funds, in addition to the funds that was used for the fire station 12 years ago. Well, 12 years ago, the town bought property to relocate this fire station, not too far from here. And, well, they bought it 18 years ago, and then they purchased more property 10 or 12 years ago. And it's very expensive property on the main intersection. If you're going to do anything with that property, you should sell it. If it's not going to put the fire station there, because it doesn't fit the growth pattern right now. But between the sale for rehab or historical for the fire station building downtown and for the property, if you sold it, that was originally designated for the fire station on the Apex Peakway or Old Raleigh Road, you would have enough money to build a new station where it belongs, according to the new growth pattern. I think you should consider this before we dump tons of money where it may not be needed. In summary, you can have both, an historic station and a new fire station for the same price. That's basically what I want to say.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Foresta.
Thank you. I hope you consider it.
All right, we will, and I will acknowledge that you sent something via email too, which hopefully
That was a different proposal.
Oh, okay.
I'm basically desperately trying to come up with a way to keep the fire station presence downtown
Yep.
and still have a presence.
All right, thank you, sir.
That's where I'm coming
Thanks
from.
for coming tonight. Yep. All right, and that being the end of the list, we will close the public forum and now move into public hearings. Public hearing number 1 has been noted as being continued until September 17th so that the planning board has an opportunity to review it and make a recommendation to the council. I see no objection to this. Therefore, I'd like to call for a motion to continue this item until September 17th.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, that is continued until September 17th. And in fact, we didn't even have a sign-up sheet, so there's no one who has signed up to speak to that tonight. We now move to public hearing number 2. This is a rezoning application for the Linden lot. And presenting that tonight is Liz Lofton, our senior planner.
Good evening. This is Linden Lot 22 PUD at 2236 Olive Chapel Road. The project is located in our western part of the jurisdiction. The parcel is east of Linden Grove, and Woodridge is to the east. Linden Grove is to the west, and Linden subdivision to the north is under construction. The applicant is proposing to rezone to plain unit development conditional zoning. The 2045 land use map identifies the proposed site as medium density residential, and the proposed PUD is consistent with that classification. The property is currently vacant, wooded, and a part is wetlands, shown in the blue. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on April 24th. A copy is in the staff report. The applicant is proposing 11 single-family lots with a density of 2.44 units per acre. Please see page 2 of the staff report for a full list of the design controls. The buffers are a 30-foot type B, a 20-foot type B along Woodridge, and to the north, a 10-foot type B, and these are consistent with the UDO. The PUD is south and west of Highway 540 and therefore required to preserve 25% RCA. If the subdivision is to be mass graded, then an additional 2% of RCA will be provided. Please note that this rezoning was submitted in May prior to the July UDO amendment changing the additional RCA to 5% for mass grading subdivisions. This site will have town water, sewer, and electric services. Since this project is less than 30 single-family detached units, it was not required to be reviewed by the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission. A fee in lieu will be required based on the date of town council approval. The proposed PUD is consistent with the Apex Transportation Plan, and the proposed development will be accessed off of Linden Grove Lane. The development will be required to dedicate additional right-of-way and provide a 6-foot wide paved shoulder bike lane on Olive Chapel Road, as required by the Apex Transportation and Bike Plans. The applicant has also offered an additional transportation condition, subject to the town and DOT approval, of off-site public sidewalk along Olive Chapel. It will be extended to the property boundary, and a mid-block crossing and associated sidewalk improvements will be installed to connect to the sidewalk along Holland's Crossing, or in front of Holland's Crossing. The applicant provided a full list of the standard architectural conditions, and those can be found on page 3 of the staff report. And those are consistent with the homes that are under construction in Linden subdivision. They have added one additional condition that all homes be pre-wired for solar power. And I believe the applicant is also proposing some additional conditions tonight, but I'll let him speak to that. Planning staff can recommend approval with the conditions as offered by the applicant. Approval of the rezoning is reasonable because the proposed plan unit development conditional zoning is consistent with the medium density residential land use map classification, and the density is in keeping with the surrounding development. The planning board heard this item at our August 12th meeting and unanimously recommended approval of the rezoning. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for staff?
So we're gonna have pedestrian crossing Olive Chapel Road.
That's
Taking
what,
that sidewalk.
that is what is proposed. And that's subject to approval at the time of subdivision as well.
But per the UDO, they will have a sidewalk across.
Yes, they would have sidewalk.
Any others? No? All right, I'll open the public hearing now, and we will call these in order. There are 3 people who have signed up. Charlize Yoakley, I hope I got that right. Or Charlie, sorry, that's an I, isn't it? Charlie.
Not as good looking as Charlotte.
Charlie.
I appreciate it.
No, that's all right. If it weren't for the beard. All right, Mr. Yoakley, is it Yoakley?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Evening, everybody. My name is Charlie Yoakley. I'm a senior planner with the McAdams Company in Durham, North Carolina. We're representing the. Sorry, I tend to come across pretty loud on those things.
That's all right.
Representing the developer of this potential developer of this parcel in the rezoning case.
All right, Mr. Yoakley, before you begin, we'll, as the representative of the applicant, we'll give him 9 minutes for this. All right, very well.
Thank you. So the current zoning is RR. I'll recap a little bit what Liz said. We are proposing PUD conditional zoning. The use of this property matches the future land use map for medium density residential and the development site areas there and in the report. So when I was putting this presentation together, I was trying to figure out how to present this thing. Took a look at the documents that had to accompany the PUD plans. And there's several PUD purpose statements, intended service findings of facts. So I figured that was probably the best way to address how this development meets the standards and requirements of the town of Apex. So I'll just go through those quickly. The first PUD purpose statement describes a permitted mix of uses in the PUD district. We're proposing a single use, that's single family residential lot, so we have 11 of them. The proposed density is 2.59 units per acre, and that matches the density permitted in the future land use map. The second purpose statement describes the dimensional standards in the PUD. The Linden Lot 222 development dimensional standards are here on the screen. These are identical to what has recently been approved in the Linden development to the north. So this will look similar to the Linden development. The third statement relates to the requirements for improvements that are shown on adopted plans and policies, such as greenways, sidewalks, and things like that. And we are proposing to construct a public sidewalk to fill in a gap in the public sidewalk system. And this sidewalk would be on the north side of Olive Chapel and then cross at our property boundary to the east and connect to an existing sidewalk on the south side. The reason this was the solution we came up with is because in the development to the east here at Woodcroft, there is along Olive Chapel a berm with some very substantial landscaping that's mature, and we don't want to disturb that. So this is what we could come up with to get the sidewalk connection and close that gap in this area. The next statement relates to the construction of transportation network and interconnectivity. Linden Grove Lane is located to our west. The properties to the east have been developed. There aren't any opportunities to connect, so we don't have any places that we can punch a road through to connect to a stub or anything. So we'll have a street, an internal street, and an internal cul-de-sac to serve the 11 lots. And one, again, we will construct the off-site public sidewalk. And one thing to note is that Linden Grove Lane, as part of this Linden Grove Lane up through the Linden development, up through Sweetwater, all of this will connect this side of town up to 64 to provide a sort of a relief valve for traffic in this area to get up to 64. The next statement is regarding the impact of development on surrounding properties. Will be a residential development designed to look and feel like the larger Linden development, and we don't believe this will have this. We do believe this will fit in with the character and be compatible with the surrounding properties. And then the next statement relates to the architecture. Liz hit on this. The architectural commitments, the building elevations that were provided as part of this rezoning application are identical to those in the Linden development. So that's what will be constructed on Lot 22. And here on the screen are some more of those standards that we are committing to as it relates to the architecture of the buildings in the subdivision. So this project site is located within the primary watershed overlay district, and so we will have to comply with the built upon area vegetated conveyances and stormwater controls. The PUD will preserve a minimum of 25% with an extra 2% if the site is mass graded. And there has been some conversation sort of between planning board and today regarding this development upping that RCA commitment based on the mass grading. Our issue here is that when the Linden development, the larger Linden development was approved, the town of Apex requires that stormwater be treated, 85% of the total suspended solids be removed from stormwater to the maximum extent practical. At the time, it wasn't practical to treat the stormwater runoff from Linden Grove Avenue. This development, Lot 11, will treat that runoff from Linden Grove Avenue. To do that, though, we can't give up the extra 3% and still have a development. Once we go to 5% more and 30% of the site in resource conservation area, our stormwater controls don't work, and the site almost or does become, become undevelopable. The project will dedicate additional right-of-way along Olive Chapel Road as required by the Apex Transportation Plan. That will be half of the right-of-way needed to get to the required 110 foot of right-of-way that is required in the transportation plan. And all the lots in this development will be served by public water and sewer. So the zoning conditions, and again, we've had some conversations between the planning board meeting and today. So we have the two conditions that were included in the application that was forwarded you from Planning Board, that being the off-site sidewalk construction and all homes in the development being pre-wired for solar. We'd like to volunteer 4 extra conditions or additional conditions. At least one home will be constructed with a solar system minimum capacity of 4 kilowatts. LED lights will be used throughout the development for street lights and things like that. Heating system of at least 95% efficiency will be installed in all the homes, and all HVAC units in the homes will have a minimum of SEER value of 16. And again, we did look into the extra 3% of RCA. We just don't feel like we can make that work and the development work at the same time, given the additional stormwater controls that we're implementing in the development to handle something that isn't handled by another development. With all that said, I'm done, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you guys have.
Real quick, can you go through that list of 4 additional
Yes.
conditions just a tad slower? I got the first one was a 1 4-kilowatt solar system installed
In one home, yes,
on
sir.
one home, right? Number 2 was LED lighting along this,
We just said
for exterior lighting
yes,
of the public infrastructure.
right.
Okay, and what was number 3 then?
A heating system of at least 95% efficiency will be installed on each home within the Linden Lot 22 development.
Okay, thanks. And then number 4 was SEER 16
Yes,
on
sir.
the HVACs?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks. I just couldn't write them down quite
Yep.
fast enough. I wanted to
Understood.
make sure everybody got them. I don't have any more questions, but I'll turn it over to council, see if there's questions for the applicant.
So you mentioned some conditions related to solar, so I was wondering if you had any other things you wanted to share that may make this development amongst a lot of other development there, to make sure it's unique besides that.
I think overall, the Linden development is unique. The architecture is unique. The layout's unique. There are a lot of amenities within the Linden development that this will be part of. I think overall, without any extra conditions to add, that this development is unique in Apex.
So is the price range similar to the current Linden,
Yes, ma'am.
which is?
I don't know that off the top of my head. It starts in the 4s.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain okay, so we changed the rule about from 2 to 5% in June, I think. Planning board probably heard it in May. So you said you couldn't get it to work with the development. So am I correct in saying you guys would not have proposed a development in this spot if you had been a month later?
That may have been the case, yes, sir. And I can, not an engineer, I'm a planner. The project manager engineer is here, and I'd be glad to have him come up and be able to talk a little more intelligently about grading and stormwater controls than I can do.
Okay, because since May, we've had several very large rainstorms that have flooded with mud rivers several mass-graded developments. And so I see things have changed and it made that decision to go to 5% even more important than it is right now, or than it was maybe last year. And maybe those are once-in-a-lifetime type storms, but I don't think so. And I think going in that higher direction was a good move. And so I don't know how 3% can really knock something from yes to no, but I'd be happy to hear why.
Council, Mayor, hey, I'm Ryan Akers with McAdams, engineer. We looked at this and I considered the 3% RCA because you weren't the only person that brought that up. To be honest, we didn't really expect how big that stormwater control measure would need to be to accommodate the impervious off Linden Grove Way. If you look at it, it's hard to tell, but we're going to be treating basically from the traffic circle all the way down, plus some of Olive Chapel Road. That's more impervious than the site actually has on itself. So if we were to bypass that, which we can do by code, it shrinks our pond down considerably, and we could probably accommodate the 3%. But given where the low point in that street is and the environmental benefits for stormwater treatment over 3% additional RCA, we're already given 20%. I think it makes a lot more environmental sense to go the stormwater route, since it's already set up for that, and we can do the additional treatment. Now, the one thing I would say that this pond is so big because of the additional impervious that we have to put retaining walls up against the stormwater control measure. And the ordinance is written in such a way that as soon as you add a hard surface against the stormwater control measure, you can't count the natural area that you're reconstructing as resource conservation area. So I basically have to take that huge pond that I'm building off the table for conservation area. So it's kind of a double whammy in that regard. And so I think that it makes most sense to go the stormwater impervious treatment route over the RCA.
Okay.
Is that fair?
We'll see.
Is there anything else?
I think I have a question for you. Do you have any insight on, I'm just asking, you might not know, I know you're not a weather person, but those recent rain events where they fall, and I've heard some.
So yeah, there was a recent storm event. I also represent the Westford project, which is off of Jenks Road and Highway 64. We had, and I actually also live off Wimberley Road right there. We measured, I think, 5.5 inches in under 2 hours, which is on the scale of 100+ year event. It was substantial. We had some culvert blowouts that have been in place for 50 years, not because of that site, but adjacent landowners that are larger lots. They had just streams to blow out. And we had Linden here, there was our ponds filled up, which we detain up to the 25, 50 years. So, I mean, it was a significant event that happened at that particular juncture. And I think that was 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? I'll ask, because I don't know who to ask. Just, I was one of the people who was interested in the 3% extra, and I do understand I'd much rather have, frankly, stormwater management, as you described, rather than go back to the 3% as much as I would love to see it. My question is, LED lights, you said throughout the exterior, will you be putting them into the homes as a first shot?
I don't know the answer to that. The representative, Jay Colvin, with Fielding Homes is here, but I think the question that we had asked the development is if we could go LED in the public rights of way, and there was agreement to that. I think Fielding Homes does have some component of LEDs in their house spec, but to what degree it's 100%, I don't know the answer to that. I know that there are certain amenities and upgrades to the house that you can get and go 100% LED. But I think that might be a owner's choice to upgrade.
Okay. I used to believe that LED lights cost more than compact fluorescents. And I was looking on Amazon and found it's a push, and sometimes it's cheaper to go LED. So I would hope that that consideration would be taking place, because it's a 10-year investment, basically, in terms of lighting. And if you end up with compact fluorescent lights, you've got 10 years worth of lights that are substantially more inefficient than LED lights. So I know other developers are doing that. David Weekly is one that comes to mind, and a couple others. I would hope that you can go ahead and take that step and at least certainly promote it. I have a friend that got into a brand new home, and he thought they were all going to be LED lights. And he found out he had compact fluorescents. And his next step was to take them all out, because in the long haul, and it doesn't take that many years, if that, to pay back from the efficiency of the LED. So I would hope the representative back there could commit to something.
I don't know that right now, given everything else that we've discussed from the housing standpoint, I don't see that this may be a huge dollar. And if that's the market trend right now, to go to LED sure knows I do it at my house too. Whenever one of my incandescents or PCs blow out, I replace it with LED. And if I think we get them in bulk and they're not very much more expensive. But to that point, then that's the way people are going to go naturally. I don't need to commit to that.
I understand that too. It's always nice to see commitment. So, okay. All right.
So, question as well. So back to the mid-block crossing across Olive Chapel Road. Is it just going to be striping across the road? Or are you guys going to have flashing lights? What is this going to be?
So again, that condition was crafted in such a way that we have to get DOT approval. We've driven out there and there's a curve coming out of, I don't know. You right back up. I think there's one. Oh, that might show it. There's a curve that starts up there near Apex Barbecue, and coming out of that, it's a 45-mile-an-hour speed zone. Mm-hmm. I've driven out there and cars start as they get into the straightaway. You know, some of the Mario Andretti types kind of pick up speed, but I think coming out of that curve, there is a slower speed. Sight distance is a concern, but if DOT warrants that, since it is their right-of-way, we would obviously do something to address the pedestrian safety component. But mid-block crossings typically, and Russell isn't here or else I would ask the question, but I believe typically they are the high visibility, the white 8-foot wide stripes that are 2-foot wide staggered, kind of like to demarcate the pedestrian crossing, and that would be required in an instance like this.
My concern is not necessarily the striping, but the people. You know.
But I mean, so the
crossing.
striping is there to acknowledge to motorists that there is a pedestrian zone, and you have ample forewarning signage that's required at a pedestrian crossing. Now, whether motorists heed that, you know, that's what we'd have to look into.
This feels a bit like the, I want to say Jenks Carpenter Road, where Cary, when they built the neighborhood there on what was historically a 45-mile-an-hour road, back road, there's a pedestrian crossing now, and it does have the high visibility white stripes and the signs, and I go through there about once a week. And I have had to stop for pedestrians, but there's enough room there to see it, even with curves. And I think what'll eventually happen is you'll see a lot of this part of Olive Chapel may drop down to 35 at some point, but that's up to DOT. But I think if they require, I mean, with a crossing, obviously we'd want DOT to make sure that they would put in their best practice for crossings. Any other questions for the applicant?
I'm sorry. I just have one more question related to that, since I am on that road just about every day. My question is, are you going to wait until it's warranted, or are you going to actively engage with NCDOT related to that?
We would have to engage as part of our master subdivision plan, because it would require a permit, that would be a two-party encroachment agreement through the DOT. So that would be very upfront.
Thank you.
All right. If there are no other questions for the applicant, then we'll open the public hearing. Actually, I think I opened it already. Mr. Yoakley made his presentation for the applicant. Thank you, Ryan, for stepping up. I'd like to now refer or call the next folks, Kyle Damborski, followed by Maria Angelica Geis. And as you come up, as usual, please state your name and address and proceed.
All right. Thank you. I'm Kyle Damborski. I reside at 1005 Tamora Court. It's one of the adjacent properties to the proposed development on Linden. One of the things that I'd like to bring to your attention tonight is one of the concerns that we've raised previously with the developer on this at the original town hall meeting concerning the stormwater runoff in the area, particularly how the original Linden development has changed some of the character of that runoff, and how this additional regrading that's going to be required for this development, given the slope in the land, is going to actually impact some of the drainage that we currently have present. And with the recent storms that we've observed and some of the concerns that, in terms of washout that we've seen while walking through this area, We are concerned that there may be the possibility for risk to the adjacent properties, which are our own, and we have not seen anything communicated from the builder to date regarding how this will be mitigated. Now, I understand that might be taking place in some of the planning meetings, which unfortunately some of the members of our community have not been able to attend due to scheduling conflicts. However, we've not seen that, and we've also communicated this by email to the planning committee, an assigned letter as well, where I believe we had, I'll let Angelique speak to this, around 11 people sign up on this that are concerned due to the adjacent properties. Additionally, really our greatest concern is that we have good neighbors next to us. So it's good to hear that they're not going to be extending the sidewalk next to some of the mature development that we have on Olive Chapel. One of the concerns that we do have, though, is the side abutments for this development are not really consistent with the back abutments that we have to that existing property. So most of our properties are much deeper, going back toward this proposed new development, and it's wooded to date. The proposal that we've seen has been to clear cut this land, which is going to significantly change the appearance of that neighborhood. That's another concern that we have, and we would like to make sure that they're being consistent with Apex regulations and also being good neighbors as they're coming into the community. So that's primarily what I wanted to raise tonight. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to concerned citizens on this, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Damborski. Maria Angelica Geis? Or Angelique, I'm not sure, I heard both.
Both.
Okay.
My name is Maria Angelica Geis. I go by Angelique. I live at 1007 Tamora Court, right next to Mr. Dombarski. I won't repeat what he has said already, but I will provide additional detail regarding the drainage concerns. During the original meeting with the developer, they mentioned that they would bring the property to grade so that it would go into like the sewer street drainage system. However, if you take a look at lot 22, it's a big hole. And it had been mentioned in a comment during the developer meeting that they weren't going to fill a lot of this land because it would cost a lot of money. How they're going to bring that to grade so that the drainage is properly gets moved away from the conservation area, I'm not sure. I can't see that. There are two adjacent properties to the bigger Linden development right now that have experienced adverse impact on the drainage, and we just want to make sure that that doesn't happen to the other neighbors that are adjacent to lot 22. Some of this drainage problems cause new water flows within the wooded area, and so what happens is that with additional water flow through the wooded area, it erodes the root systems off the trees. One adjacent property owner had a big tree fall down on his property because of that additional water flow. So just a little additional detail for you to consider as they submit the plans for the drainage, please.
All right.
Thank you very
Ms.
much.
Geis. All right, having reached the end of the list, I'll close the public hearing. And as I usually do, I ask the applicant if they wish to have any closing remarks before comments, before the council begins to deliberate. It's optional. Okay.
May I ask just a question?
To the applicant?
To the applicant.
Sure.
It's, from what has been stated, it certainly is always a concern with clear cutting and mass grading. It sounds like the stormwater pond's going to be quite oversized for this specific lot.
That's correct.
That's what I understand. The concern I have is the sedimentation pond typically that is needed. Is that going to be oversized also, or because that's where you start to really run into trouble. You grade the property and the stuff runs off. And once it gets grassed and everything else, life is a whole lot better for the type of runoff that you get.
Because this site is only 4 acres, the first thing we'll do when we go out there is build that pond, the footprint, and the dam. We only build them once, so we don't have to pay for it twice. So it will act very much like the permanent pond with a skimmer that does top-down desedimentation over I think, a 2-day period. So that will be in play on day one. But we do have to clear for that, and we will clear the trees for the lots. I think I made a statement to, I don't remember which counselor, but these are Triassic soils. We do have to amend the soils for foundations, or else you get cracking. I don't know if anybody in the adjacent neighborhood, that some of these houses built in the late 80s, early 90s, you know, all the cracks in the drywall, it just happens in the soil group. So we have to amend the soil. We have to engineer the pad, so to speak. These are engineered lots, so we have to take the stormwater runoff to do TSS removal that Mr. Yoakley spoke to before. So with all that, we will grade, but we will have the sediment erosion control device in first.
All right, thank you.
All right, deliberation, comments, anything leading towards a motion of some kind? Council?
Basically, I'm satisfied. I will say, I understand the trade-off between the water pond, the stormwater pond, and the extra 3%. And these guys started out under the lower requirement for additional resource conservation area. So I'll make a motion to approve based on that. But,
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for approval, and just so I can clarify, that's with all the conditions, not only that were offered in the packet, but also the 4 additional conditions that were offered by the applicant tonight.
that's correct.
Okay, second. All right. All right, so there's the motion and a second for approval. Do we have discussion on that motion? Okay, not hearing any, I'll call for the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no.
No.
Okay, I counted 2 in favor, 3 against. Does anyone disagree? All right, that motion fails by a vote of 2 to 3. Is there anything else anyone wants to add?
I'll explain. My thing was the 3%. I mean, I think I wouldn't mind seeing this come back to us with that extra %, which we'll have to do now. And you guys are pretty smart. I think you can engineer this in a way that can make that achievable, or put one less house on there, I guess. And from my point of view, people are not clamoring for more houses on Olive Chapel at all. They are clamoring for more protections of stormwater and forests. So that's where I'm coming from.
Could I make a motion to continue this item then, rather than have them come over?
I think that would be in order. Any objection? That was a failed motion to approve. It was not necessarily a successful motion to deny. But we've already had the public hearing. I don't know that I'll let the attorney think.
Contemplate, if.
Yes.
Mayor, while she's doing that, can't the winning side make a request to have it reconsidered? I thought that was
I believe the majority, if you're on the majority side,
one of the majority.
you may ask for a reconsideration. You may request a reconsideration. I'll come back to you in just a moment. I want to let the,
I'll wait patiently.
yeah, thank you. I'll let the attorney do her job.
Mayor, can we take a small break?
Sure, if that would probably be a good idea. We'll take a very, very brief recess, and we will reconvene in about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, something close to that. All right. We're in recess.
I sneak in like this. Next. That was there.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We need to be there. We need to be there. Opener this time. That would be nice.
How many of these things have we done?
We've done it that 1 year. We had all the good players that got suspended that 1 year to clean up. We didn't do it.
Yep. The proposal for the rest of solar on our buildings here. So that's gonna come up next meeting or the meeting after that.
Town buildings.
Yeah. Public works. The rest of public works.
You got me thinking of solar all the time, Bill. The canopy things and town buildings.
I look at the solar, it's, I mean, we talk about that. It's an investment that you actually get payback on.
Yeah.
Whereas parks is nice, where the payback is enjoyment.
I saw that, I listened to a podcast about something, they were talking about, why the price has gone down so much. It's the cost of the panels. It's the heating meters. And but they've got better equipment installing it now, like they've got better tools, and they put together easier, and we can do it like
do.
a couple hours all day.
I was looking at the installation on the firehouse out on the S5 mounts is what they're called, to put the solar panel to the raised seam. They have a little clamp that goes over the raised seam, and then and just looking at those, knowing what the original ones look like, and the cost, because I come out of the mechanical world, the cost that was involved with the original ones is you had 3 times or 4 times what the new ones are, because there's thin. But fun. Good luck, and you guys. You mean,
No, I think just, I mean, there's nothing to,
you,
I asked them to put, they could do that for
Mowing grass. A lot better.
with the wood,
What's like?
It's like a big bird now, big dog. Yeah, he's feeling especially after I told him.
that, yeah, that
50
doesn't
this
come,
long,
50
this
houses.
thing is not fixed.
It's a good idea.
There was a lot of, yeah, there was a couple of bills that were just simple stuff, but he used to never miss. Yeah, he would get paranoid that he missed a bill, so he would write like 3 months worth of cable, TV.
So does he have? I mean, does he officially have like the next year?
I don't think it's diagnosed as it yet. It may be early onset.
Maybe it was just over one.
Are you set? Okay, all right. We got everything? All right. We're now reconvened, and I'd like to turn the floor over to the town attorney for findings.
so the motion to postpone to a future date, I don't think would be in order because there's nothing pending. There's been a motion and that motion failed. I think the most expedient way to resolve it is if there were someone who voted on the winning side, as you said, that voted against the approval of this, wanted to make a motion to reconsider, then that question of reconsideration could be considered, and if that is approved, that motion to reconsider just takes you back to that point right before the vote.
Right. Okay.
And at that point, then a motion to postpone to come back in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or what have you would be appropriate.
Understood. All right, thank you. That's very clear. In deference to Councilman Jensen, did you, I'll ask, I guess, the voters of the majority, was there anyone who wanted to, oh, sorry, I'll mute my microphone. Was there anyone on the majority that wanted to vote for reconsideration or wanted to make a motion of reconsideration?
Well, I guess I had a pretty clear suggestion of RCA increase that if that's part of the plan, I wouldn't mind looking at it again. So I guess that means
well,
I reconsider at a later date, or
Yes.
As the town attorney said, the most expedient way to reconsider a vote would be to vote again would be to reconsider first, and then that would roll back the vote if it passed with a majority. If the reconsideration passed with a majority, then the vote is undone, and then we could entertain a motion of continuance to the next meeting or some date certain.
okay, I'll make a motion to reconsider with what you said.
All right. So
I'm afraid we're going to start to have like the time be 10 times longer because of we're dreams have a dream. But
it won't take that long. I don't think.
I'm just kidding. But
okay, we have a motion to reconsider the vote. Is there a second? And it can be anyone.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to reconsider the vote. This would enable us to continue to entertain a motion to continue the vote until the next meeting or some date certain. And if that fails, then we would need to vote again tonight. And if it passes, then we could defer the vote until a future date. So we have a motion and a second for reconsideration. Any discussion on that motion?
can I suggest a date?
When we get to that motion.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. We got,
Right now, it's reconsideration. Any discussion on the motion to reconsider? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no?
No.
All right, I counted 3 in favor of reconsidering and 2 against. Does anyone disagree? Okay, we are now reconsidering. Actually, I would like to make a note of that if you'll pause just for 1 second.
Is there a chance to hear the speaker applicant again?
Yes, 1 second. 1 second. I just want to make sure I got that in my notes because I want to make sure I record exactly how this went. So now we're reconsidering. The vote is I guess formally undone for the moment. So now we open the floor for questions or comments from council members, which could include asking the applicant something if you like. And since Councilman Gant, since you made the motion of reconsidering, I would be happy to give you the floor first.
All right, so in the emails to you guys, I suggested the RCA be 5% and that to be added to the buffers along Olive Chapel and Woodridge neighborhoods at the extra 1.45% or acres, whatever it would be, of this development.
Right.
Anyway, that was out there a couple weeks or a week ago, I guess.
Right, and we've talked about it. We'll commit to that extra 5% if the site's masqueraded next to Woodbridge and along Olive Chapel.
Okay.
But you will keep the stormwater control management as is.
I don't think we can do that because the pond gets, if we have to save the extra area, then the pond has to get smaller because we can't have hardscape features in our stormwater control. And so we can't count the stormwater area where those hardscape features are towards the RCA, then the site doesn't work. We can't get to 30% we can't do 30% RCA and treat offsite runoff. All right.
Can I speak engineering jargon?
Please.
Sorry. I see what you were saying and what he was saying. I just want to interject. The pond is going to change slightly based on the design. We won't be able to take as much as the offsite impervious that's bypassing today. That's going into Polar Bear Lake, but it will still be sized adequately to meet the ordinance and the erosion control issues. But because we're saving additional trees, it should go down and be smaller because there's more permanently protected open space, so it's going to have to be a balancing act. So I might have to bypass a little bit of existing impervious, but it's still going to be sized taking some of that offsite into the, I'm going to have to balance it, in other words, to get rid of the retaining wall and get it from the engineering perspective to get it all work.
Is the polar bear thing you mentioned to the south somewhere?
Here, it's you can watch, I'll show you. That lake right there looks like a polar bear.
Oh.
Yep.
It does.
It really does.
Oh, yeah, I see it now.
Yep.
And were you bypassing that because it was a problem?
You're just talking Linden Grove Way?
The pond that...
So just looking at this map, you can see this is the absolute low end of the site. A lot of these lots over here off Tamora, they all drain towards our development. So all this offsite comes through these culverts and goes into the lake. Our pond's going to be down at the low end. So I have to take all the impervious front that's existing that's coming down to that low point, and I'm going to have to treat some of that. So by giving an extra 3%, that pond has to get a little bit smaller, and I'm going to try to get rid of the retaining wall and maybe credit some of the pond as RCA by doing enhanced plantings, but I can't plant the pond berm with woody vegetation or else it doesn't meet the state requirement. So it's going to be a little bit of an engineering juggle. I guess I didn't react to council's desire for the extra 3% with enough vigilance, but I think we can do it with a little bit of fine-tuned engineering.
Okay, and the extra will go on the buffers of those two sides?
Yeah, well, we have a substantial amount there today. These lots here back up, there is a lot of RCA. There's some in the center. We're probably going to add additional over here by reducing that pond against the backyards of these property owners here. So yes.
I think in particular the number, try and get the one, squattest one would be the most important to me. Yeah.
Right
That
here?
one, yeah.
We can look into that. There's a street node right here that stops, and so, but yeah, we can work with the layout.
Okay. I'm actually okay with a variable width buffer on that side if it maximizes that number 11. Is it? I can't tell. 11, but anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, 11. That's the one I'm most concerned about. I'm not sure that's one of you guys, but yeah.
Oh dear Lord.
So.
I don't know. Let's go.
Is added to the buffers on those two sides. That makes me happy.
So before you leave, Mr. Akers, can you and Mr. Yockley clarify if this is your desire to add an additional condition?
Yes, it's our desire to add that condition.
Can you, I think for Ms. Lofton and the planning director say, can you be specific on how you want the wording?
Specifically, in order to masquerade this site, we're willing to commit to the current UDO requirement of 5% RCA above the base RCA.
Can I read what I've written, and if you're okay with it?
Sure.
Okay.
It's probably better than what I would have said anyway.
So it says, if masqueraded, an additional 5% RCA shall be provided along Olive Chapel Road and Woodridge buffers.
Yeah.
So it would not apply if you decide not to masquerade.
Correct.
Did you catch that?
Yeah.
I'll just make sure you got that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
You
thank
don't
you.
need any time to look at this or anything like that. You're good. All right.
Okay, so we have an additional condition offered by the applicant. And I guess I'll turn back to Councilman Gant and Councilman Jensen. I know you both were considering this. Anything else you want
I
to?
guess, Diane, so because if they're going to add to the buffers, the part of the PUD with the buffers may need to be not set in stone of 30 feet and 20 feet, right?
Well, I mean, what's shown on this exhibit is 20 at the top and 30 at the bottom, and so it needs to be wider than that.
At least,
Yeah,
I guess. How
yeah.
you do
It can't be less than that, and it needs to be wider, so
you
we'll,
can do-
we'll work with them.
Okay,
But, and we heard you talk about Lot 11, we'll make sure we
okay.
get something there.
So
Let's swing vote here. I'll make a motion that we approve with that additional condition, as Diane said,
okay,
and the others we had.
Councilman Moyer, I'm out of the proposal business right now.
do you want to second? I think is what he's asking you.
I'll second that.
All right, so the motion and the second is for approval with the 4 conditions as previously discussed, added, all the conditions that staff proposed initially that the planning board heard, and with this 5th proposal as worded by Diane Ken of the planning department. Is there any discussion on that motion?
I have a question, and I don't know if the applicant can answer this. You mentioned the starting point of these houses is going to be 400-ish. Is that correct?
Yes.
With these additional requirements that you guys have offered that we just talked about, what does that do to the end cost? Do you have a?
Yeah, it'll be more.
It increases.
I don't think it changes the first number, it's just higher in the,
Yeah.
or it's starting in the 4s.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the motion?
I do appreciate you guys doing the walkable thing. That was my request, and I think it will connect not just this neighborhood, but the ones in the north to the rest of the neighborhoods that it wouldn't have been really achievable otherwise. So I think that crosswalk will be safe, I hope, and also popular. At least it'll cross anyway. I think it'll be a popular one, and this will be safer, I think.
All right. Not hearing any other discussion, I'll call for the vote on the motion to approve with all the conditions, including the 5. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no.
No.
All right, that passes by 3-2. Does anyone disagree? All right, that passes by 3-2. Just checking with the town attorney, make sure everything's buttoned up good on that one. All right, very good. So that concludes public hearing number 2. Thanks for working with us, Mr. Yoakley. And Mr. Akers, thank you so much. Public hearing number 3. This is rezoning application 19CZ13, and presenting is Lauren Staudenmeyer.
Good evening. This is rezoning case 19CZ13 located at 2213 East William Street. The property is located in this general vicinity. The property to be rezoned is 3.11 acres and is located on the east side of East Williams Street, south of MCI Enterprise, and west of the Sunset Hills subdivision. The future 540 right-of-way goes between MCI and this property, just for reference. The property currently contains a stockpile. Before moving forward, I would like to point out that the Sunset Hills subdivision was established prior to the UDO. That means that there isn't a perimeter buffer on their subdivision. So so when this subject property will be developed, they will only have one buffer on site, not a cumulative buffer of both from the Sunset Hills and this property.
So sorry to interrupt. That makes the buffer rules more when it's not. Does it make the buffers wider because of that?
No.
I read that and didn't quite understand when it was before versus after. Like, how would it have been if it had been a neighborhood that had 20-foot buffers there?
Then it would be whatever class what the use is. It would be with that class with the class 2, which is the Sunset Hills subdivision. So it would be a class 20 type A plus whatever the perimeter buffer would be for that. So it'd just be cumulative. So they wouldn't be right up against.
So now they're having to go further into their property to have the buffer, I guess, as a result?
No, this is just for a.
Sorry. No, she's just trying to point out that there's no buffer on the neighborhood, so the buffer that's required by this development will be essentially half of what you would normally see. They are not required to do a wider buffer.
Okay.
Isn't it a 40-foot buffer, though, for business to? No.
For a 40-foot would be with a class 5 against class 2, correct?
40-foot would be.
40 type A would be correct. If it was a class 5, what the use would be with a class 2.
In this case.
If it was to be a permitted use and the use was a class 5,
okay,
that's what it would be, just an example.
All right.
The property is currently zoned rural residential. The adjacent zonings are to the north, south and west, rural residential, and to the east is high-density single-family residential conditional use. The applicant is proposing to rezone this property to neighborhood business conditional zoning. The 2045 land use map identifies the proposed site as medium-density residential commercial services. The proposed rezoning is consistent with the land use map designation, and as mentioned before on the aerial slide, this is where the 540 right-of-way will be, and it actually clips a little bit of this property. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on May 30th, 2019, and a copy of the neighborhood report is in your packet. A full list of the proposed uses are included on page 2 of the staff report. Uses such as daycare, convenience store, medical or dental, office or clinic, office, business or professional, retail sales general, and microbrewery. The applicant has provided 2 architectural conditions specific for non-residential buildings. A full listing starts on page 2 of the staff report. There are 4 proposed conditions I would like to point out. A private cross-access easement will be extended to the southern property line subject to the review and approval of the future site plan. The use of the property as a school, public, or private shall not exceed 10,000 square feet. The third is a health, fitness center, or spa shall be limited to 50% of the total building area with indoor activities only. And the fourth is the restaurant drive-through use shall be designated for beverage service only. Approval of the rezoning is reasonable and in the public interest because it will provide an opportunity for non-residential uses to serve the surrounding residences within the area, while providing flexibility for future development within the surrounding properties. Planning Board heard this rezoning at their August 12th meeting and unanimously approved. Planning staff can recommend approval with conditions as offered by the applicant. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I have a question.
Yes.
So with the 540 right-of-way right there, we're not going to run into another situation like the daycare on 64 in Lower Duncan where we approved a building and then the right-of-way and then they had to move and all that stuff. Are we doing everything we can to try to say, hey, give you some setback off the...
Yes. I mean, as we know, this is going to occur. We can work at site plan to make sure that does. We have precautions, obviously work with our transportation engineer and other staff members to make sure that it's accounted for.
Any others? All right, I don't see anybody chomping at the bit, so thank you, and we'll open the public hearing, and it looks like Jeff Roach has signed up. Mr. Roach, are you representing the applicant?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I am.
All right,
I went in and signed up anyway, so
you know the
Donna
drill by
can-
now?
Yes, sir.
All right, go for it.
I hope it won't take 9 minutes. So Jeff Roach, Peak Engineering and Design, 1125 Apex Peakway here in town. First of all, I appreciate the time tonight. I'll start first with Mr. Moyer's question to answer it real quick. We started working on layouts. Lauren made the presentation. We are actually giving up about 1/3 of an acre of right-of-way here in White. DOT is also buying a 30-foot PUE, permanent utility easement, along that corridor as well. And then the requirement is either a 50 or 100-foot landscape buffer between the site and the 540 right-of-way. We will ask for probably a reduction as a non-residential site tying adjacent to that right-of-way. It's a perfect spot for non-residential. It's on William Street. It's heavily traveled. It's a great morning commute for that non-residential. Follows the 2045 land use map, and we've worked with staff on a number of conditions over and above what are typically given for non-residential sites. There's also one condition that I want to give up, and Mr. Jensen and I spoke about this. I provided to staff earlier today, and please correct me if the wording is wrong. The building shall include the installation of a 4-kilowatt solar PV system. In discussion with Mr. Jensen for the non-residential, that was something that we agreed to, and the owner was contacted today and confirmed that, Mr. Jensen. So I would like to go ahead and get that on record to committing to that for you, sir.
It's a minimum, because
A minimum of 4K, but,
if you go 4 kilowatts, then you've got to go to 4 kilowatts.
well, the idea is a minimum of 4 kilowatts.
4 kilowatts.
Yes, sir. And then what will happen is they have the ability always to expand those. It's that east-west facing roof line, so it allows them to work to go higher if they can. At this point, we don't know who the builder is, what the development's going to be. We don't know if it'll be a daycare or an office building, if it'll be a physical therapist or a doctor's office. So at this point, whether it's a flat roof or a pitched roof makes a difference in the solar commitment as well. We did give up the right-of-way. We talked about buffers generally along 540. The buffer along the back, depending on what class use goes in there, whether it's a 3, 4, 5, or 6, well, it can't be a 6, so that's industrial, but basically a 3, 4, or 5 will basically set that buffer through there, whether it's an A or B. We're going to follow the ordinance on it. Sunset Hills was built 20-something years ago, so the buffers aren't, it was built without a buffer. Our goal is always to leave existing vegetation in any of our buffers. We don't want to take them down and then replant. So we will keep it as far away, keep our parking lot and our building as far away from Sunset Hills as possible, yet still make it a viable non-residential site. Like I said, it follows the 2045 land use map, and I want to thank Lauren and staff for working with us on the additional conditions. We struck a number of non-residential uses out of the application, so you guys didn't even see those, including some of the large cell towers. We struck convenience store with gas sales, some of the heavy traffic producers in this location. With that, I'm not going to take any more of your time. I've got plenty left, but I'll defer to your questions and answer as best I can.
I guess we discussed the lighting in the back. Was what I forget now actually what you said now, but was it that you would work with the town staff to have dimmers on the lights or?
So anything adjacent to a non-residential, well, pretty much any lights now are full cutoffs.
Right.
So they're physically shielded.
Yeah.
Any of the lights on the site will be pushed looking forward.
Yeah.
Up against Sunset Hills in the back, and they'll be shielded from them, pushing the light forward. The building will most likely shield anything that's on the other side, the 55 or the William Street side of the building, to reduce any glare that's going back towards Sunset Hills. And these will be, shoebox lights looking down.
I think we discussed though some kind of working with staff.
Correct.
The residential, that interface to have the lights be able to be dimmed possibly.
Correct. As part of any non-residential site, what we typically do is reach out to Rodney Smith, who is the town's electrical. He basically rents poles. A lot of the developments around are renting poles from Apex. That's something we'll work with Rodney on. I mean, it's a commitment. We do it on every project anyway, to work with him, especially if we're renting the poles, to either provide overnight dimmers, lower the lighting level, depending on what the use is at a certain time of night. It's a commitment that we'll make. I can't set a time because I don't know who that development is going to be, who the owner is going to be at the end of the day.
Okay.
So, but we'll commit to work with Rodney to get that right.
Okay.
Okay?
Drew, do we have appropriate amount of options technology-wise for lighting, exterior lighting that the town, if we're renting them, that things can be dimmed, and that's not a request? Is it a request that's actually able to be fulfilled, possibly?
If we don't have it, we can get it.
Okay.
I'm looking at the electric director just happens to be here tonight. Yeah, the technology does exist, so if it's something that we can do, yeah.
Okay. I like that be an option. We discussed it on the Roberts Road one, and I forget how that turned out. You're there, but having something that can be dimmed as an option to allow that to be the case would be, good. So it could be part of the menu of options.
And I'll make a note of it as well when we come up with minor site plan submittals as well. I've got a note here to work with Rodney to make sure we address it, and that'll go on our minor site plan as well. Just a note.
Okay, great.
Anyone else?
Sit down.
All right. Seeing that no one else has signed for the public hearing, I will close the public hearing or further matter back to council for deliberation or a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion?
I'm really glad the solar thing's included because I was thinking about the site a lot and how people are going to be driving north on that road and the solar panels are going to be right in their face, and it's going to be great. It's going to be a signal as they enter Apex. It's going to be an environmentally friendly place. And so because of it needs to be south or west facing, I guess, people are going to see it. You said it's going to be on the west side, or did you say it's going to be on the south side? I forget what you said.
We're not sure yet.
Not sure yet, okay.
I mean, based on the design of the building, they may be on the west side, they may be on the south side.
Okay.
Just depends what the end user is.
Yeah.
Daycare typically does the tilted roofs, whereas a non-residential, like an office, will be a flat roof.
Okay.
So, different things. And by the way, I'm sorry, Mr. Gant, Mr. Jensen beat you to the request.
I figured
But
that.
it's a weak request with
Yeah.
only 4 kilowatts.
You
I
know.
hope it goes bigger.
But they won't be able to even see past it because the bridge will be there, so it'll be a focus. I think it'll be really nice in this spot. Just saying.
Okay. Anything else? All right, I'll call for the vote, and just to be clear, the motion and the second was including all the conditions offered by the applicant. All right, if there's no further discussion, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, that passes unanimously. And we now move to public hearing number 4. This is rezoning 19 STC 14. This is on North Mason Street. Town of Apex is the applicant. Presenting is Liz Lofton.
So, this is a small town character amendment. It's within the Peakway, and it is across from Town Hall. Old Mill Village is to the north, and here is the boundary map of the small town character to give you a reference, and here is where the properties to be amended are. The properties are currently zoned neighborhood business. To the north, Old Mill Village is not within the small town character overlay district. These properties are office employment and commercial services on the 2045 land use map. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on June 13th, and a copy is in the staff report. Planning staff can recommend approval of the small town character amendment. The planning board heard this at their August 12th meeting and unanimously recommended approval. The amendment is in the public interest because approval will ensure that any site development will be required to apply the non-residential standards in UDO section 6.3. And I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Right. It's been a while since we've had a STC, a small town character rezoning.
Yeah. Actually, I had a question about that.
It's been a long time.
Can the town do this unilaterally, or does the applicant have to come and request small town character overlays? I know this is the same in this case, but normally, if this was somebody else, would they have to, can we just make them do it, or did they have to request the character overlay? How'd it happen originally, I guess?
The town can change the boundaries of a district as long as they go through the proper process with public hearings and all that, but we have most recently only been making changes to the small town character overlay district based on applicant requests.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Public hearing?
Oh, public hearing? Yeah, sorry. I saw no one signed up. Open the public hearing. I'll close the public hearing because no one has signed up. Now I'll ask. Thank you. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion to approve? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passes unanimously. Public hearing number 5 is changes to the MORR note on the 2045 land use map. Diane Ken.
Good evening. So you may recall we had an annexation and rezoning down in the New Hill area, that it was a historic house in a non-residential area, and it became clear that the note that we have on the current 2045 land use map isn't as clear as it should be. Currently, it just talks about that the MORR districts allowed where office, residential, or commercial uses are depicted by a striped area that includes both residential and non-residential land use classifications. So the proposed note is, it has 2 different sections. One's for MORR inside the town's corporate limits, and one is for outside. They both include the requirement that the MORR districts allowed where office, residential, or commercial uses are depicted by the striped area with both non-residential and residential. We are clarifying that retail uses may be limited in areas where it's striped for office employment and not commercial services. That was a clarification that just as we were writing it, we're like, we should clarify this. And then outside the town's corporate limits, it includes the statement that The MRR districts allowed for existing homes petitioning to come into the corporate limits in areas depicted as non-residential only, but the densities may be limited, and that's what you all decided to do on that rezoning. We think it's important to have the ability for folks to come into the corporate limits with a zoning district that keeps their house conforming use, because we do have folks that have wells and septic that are failing out in our, out past our ETJ and corporate limits. And then as well, we don't want them to be non-conforming because it makes it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to get insurance on the home, because if it burns down, it cannot be rebuilt. So for those reasons, we do recommend approval of this change.
All right, thank you. Questions for Diane, or we'll go straight into the public hearing? And no one has signed up, so I'll close the public hearing and refer the matter to council.
Motion approved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passes unanimously. We now move to public hearing number 6. And this is also Diane Ken. This is a question of annexation number 660.
All right, so this is Security Self-Storage, which is out on Van Claiborne Road, which is out here on US 64. It was a property that was developed kind of tech flex and self-storage uses in the county. They have actually received approval to do an upgrade to their site, and as part of that, they are bringing water and sewer, or at least water from Sweetwater, and so they are requesting annexation to get public services. We do recommend approval.
All right, questions for Diane?
Does this affect any kind of possible redevelopment at the site? The annexation, is it unrelated?
No, they're putting more money into the site to upgrade the site, partially because they can get sewer now.
Right, but I think there could be other uses very easily in this site. So they're already zoned, they're just not annexed.
Right, they're zoned and they have site plan approval. They are not annexed.
Okay.
Okay, if nothing else, let's see. We didn't do the public hearing yet, so I'll open the public hearing. No one signed up. So I'll close the public hearing or further matter to council for possible motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passes unanimously. We now move to public hearing number 7. And this is Shannon Cox, our long-range planning manager, talking about the transit plan map and comprehensive transportation plan.
Okay, good evening. Our adopted transit plan map shows a future bus route from Holly Springs through Apex into the town of Cary, along NC 55, just here on the map, South Salem, and using North Salem to go into downtown Cary. That's depicted by this gray label that I know is challenging to see on the screen. This route is called the Holly Springs Express, or HSX route. It will be funded by Wake Transit revenue. It will be operated by the town of Cary. Service is expected to begin in January 2020. So Town of Apex staff and Town of Cary staff have been doing detailed analysis to look more closely at how this route would serve Apex. So the proposed amendment to the transit plan is based on that collaboration. So it's not intuitive when you look at these changes. Looks like spaghetti. But there's a few reasons that there's a lot of turns and movements. One is so that the proposed HSX bus stops in Apex can be served on the passenger entry side of the bus. Another is to make left turns at signalized intersections. We also want to minimize railroad at-grade crossings and minimize the use of residential streets. So I'm going to walk you through what's shown here. The blue line depicts the inbound route. So this would be coming from Holly Springs, headed toward the town of Cary. So as shown here, the bus would move along NC 55, make a left turn on the Apex Peakway, a right turn on South Hughes, follow that up to make a right on East Moore, a right on South Mason, a right back onto 55, and then a right up South Salem and follow North Salem into the town of Cary. The outbound route coming from downtown Cary to Holly Springs is the red line. So that would be coming down Salem Street, making a left at 55, a left on South Hughes, right on East Moore, right on South Mason, right on 55, then back down South Hughes, a left on James, right on 55, right on the Peakway, left on South Hughes, and then right on 55. This route has been reviewed by the town's traffic engineer. He has no concerns. It was also reviewed by the town's transit committee, and they recommended approval. Finally, the planning board considered this amendment at their August 12th meeting and also unanimously recommended approval. And I can try to answer any questions you may have.
How many stops are proposed here?
So bus stops are not part of our adopted transit plan. That's why they're not shown here. But we are anticipating, and that's to give us flexibility. We are anticipating a stop here, which is adjacent to Cambridge Village, accessible to Walmart, and accessible to the potential affordable housing anticipated in this location. This route would also serve the existing park and ride stop at Compare Foods on South Hughes. That's why you've got the turning movements here. And then per the request of the transit committee, a stop has been added off the map here on North Salem in the vicinity of Hunter Street. That was also considered by our downtown plan steering committee.
Shannon, your guidelines that you mentioned of why we're doing this did not, in my head, match up to this route. With the neighborhood roads, the at grade was same either way. So I'm a little confused. And why in the little jog through the downtown part, why is that, why is it better than just going up 55?
So the Compare Foods Park and Ride is on South Hughes, basically in the Compare Foods parking lot. So maybe I can zoom in a little. Oops, no.
Is it to get the stop off of 55, basically? So that
Yeah, so we want to avoid stops on 55 to the extent we can until we have pullouts, which we're working on with the 55 widening project. So by doing this turn here, the bus will pick up passengers on the right side of the bus, which serves that bus shelter. And it's actually already being used by a regional bus route. And that's, with the exception of these two streets here, we're using thoroughfares on our transportation plan. And these two streets are already being used by regional routes.
Okay. Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, I have something. You mentioned that Wake Transit is funding it, and we're using Cary's bus system. Is that correct?
Yes, so the new transit tax that we're all paying funds the Wake Transit Plan. This route is in the adopted plan. The details of how it moves through Apex are not, determined in that plan, but it'll be funded by the Wake Transit revenue, and it has already been determined that Go Cary will provide the service.
How long has, it's been a couple years now that the busing thing has been in place, right?
The Wake Transit plan?
Yeah, the Wake Transit. Yeah.
I believe it was 2016.
2016. Do you have any ridership numbers, like how used it is, how many people are using it?
There are ridership numbers for every route. This is a brand-new route, so we don't have any ridership numbers.
Anything else for staff? All right, we'll open the public hearing. Don't see anyone signed up, so I'll close the public hearing or further matter to council for consideration or a possible motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passes unanimously. We now move to public hearing number 8. And this is changes to the UDO. Amanda, you get to do all these UDO changes.
Yes, I do.
You keep drawing the long straw, or you just love it? That's probably what it is.
I don't mind it.
All right, please carry us through it.
Okay, there's 3 amendments tonight. As usual, I'll pause after each one. And in this first one, there's several sections, so I'll give you a couple chances to ask questions. This is actually a request from the Economic Development Committee to several sections in the UDO in order to provide more development flexibility for North Carolina certified sites. And so the first change is in Article 6, and it is to reduce riparian buffers to be the greater of 50 feet or the state standards. So as you know, where there's a perennial stream, the town of Apex has a standard of a 100-foot buffer, essentially an additional buffer on top of the state's buffer. And the proposal is to just have a 50-foot buffer or the state standards. If the state ever increases their buffer width, then the certified site would have to comply with that as well. So there's several sections within Article 6 with text updates based on that proposed change. Do you have any questions on that part of the amendment?
So why was this proposed?
So all of these amendments in this first item provide greater design flexibility. As you know, we do have a North Carolina certified site here in town. It's Cache Corporate Center. There are riparian buffers on the site which could impair the development capacity. So it gives more flexibility for users and depending on the size of the user. So it's to provide greater development flexibility. A similar reduction was approved in the Viridia development 12 years ago. I think that's in the non-residential section as well.
So is it your staff's opinion that I see kind of weakening some of the protections will still protect the streams and the other things other amendments? I mean, we don't want to get business by polluting our rivers, right?
Sure. A 50-foot buffer does have a positive impact on water quality. And so we look at this as a very small portion of the overall Apex jurisdiction and a very important economic development area. And so we looked at all of these amendments in context of this North Carolina certified site, or any potential future site could be considered in the future, balancing out the economic development benefit to the town as a whole while still ensuring there's sufficient environmental protections that will remain. So we're not stripping all of the environmental protections from this property by any means. It's just to provide greater design flexibility when the site's laid out.
Okay.
So what is the current state requirement?
50 feet. The next section that is proposed to be amended is in Article 7. And this simply says that for sites designated as a North Carolina certified site, the master subdivision plan shall show the general location of proposed water and sewer infrastructure. That's unchanged from current practice. But then the final design of that infrastructure would not be required until the submission of a minor site plan, so that the subdivision could get approved, and someone could start with the minor site plan without having the full design of your water and sewer system. It's going to happen anyway. It's just delaying all that engineering cost
until the user is known how much land they're going to take, and so it's a more efficient timing of showing those improvements. Okay. The next section to be amended is in the resource conservation area section, and there's two amendments here. The first is to only require a tree survey within buffers. Currently, the requirement is to require a tree survey within RCA and buffers on site. So this is just, and this ties into the other amendment in this section, which is to that North Carolina certified site shall provide RCA equal to or greater than the area located within required perimeter and street buffers, riparian buffers, and preserved wetlands. Most sites already meet or provide, especially on this side of 540, meet their 20% requirement within the buffers, riparian, perimeter, street front, and preserved wetlands. And so whatever RCA can be made in those areas would be what is required.
You mentioned flexibility. Is this also coming from an example of a potential business was looking at this area and said, oh, we may come, but this is by itself is going to keep us out?
I can't speak to that directly. I don't know if Joanna has a specific example she can offer on that.
The short answer is no.
Okay.
It's just, again, as Amanda has stated, to make the site more competitive for future business opportunities.
Okay. And do a lot of certified sites across the state do this?
I don't have a specific answer for you, but I know that other sites have done similar type of changes to their town ordinances. I don't know if it's these specific ones, but whatever they've done to make it, again, more competitive for business location.
Okay, thanks.
The next and last section that is proposed to be amended as part of this item is the TIA section, and is the addition of one sentence for sites that are certified sites. The TIA may be submitted at the time of minor site plan submittal instead of master subdivision plan submittal, which in this case makes sense because we simply don't know whether someone's going to take the whole site or if it's going to be divided into any number of sites. And when we have a specific user in mind, the TIA will be tailored to that specific user, use type and size. Are there any questions on that amendment requested from the Economic Development Committee? Okay.
I guess coming from the Economic Development Committee, the tree survey, just within buffers, but not in the rest of RCA.
Well, the proposal was to reduce the RCA requirement to only that within buffers and preserved wetlands. Trees within wetlands have to be preserved anyway. There's tree protection fencing around those areas anyway. So we're going to protect those trees.
I guess in terms of the survey, if there was some giant oak tree or something outside of what we're talking about in terms of having the survey.
That's not within an area designated as RCA?
Yeah.
Well, that's weighing, that's again just weighing what you want for this economic development site, and you never know where that tree might be.
And when you're placing a 50,000 square foot building or whatever the numbers are, you don't have many options, on a parcel anyway.
Understand.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that part of the reason why I felt this was an okay way to go is the certified sites are run by the town. They're not private. So the town manager could probably address that better than I just did. But as a town, we will have the management requirement there. Is that correct?
All right. Was that a question or?
No, it's just
okay. Okay. I didn't know if you were waiting for an answer from the town manager.
You can give me an answer if you want.
No,
You're right.
yeah, there's your answer.
Oh, I was talking to the mayor.
Oh, me? No.
Fair to tell you.
You brought the town manager up, so I want to make sure you were, in all seriousness, I want to make sure that if you were
I'm with it.
leading him to a conclusion for you, I didn't want to leave you hanging.
Well, he is the one that explained it to me.
Okay, oh, gotcha,
So I
okay.
knew that he had the conclusion.
Okay, very good.
So I'd like to ask Mr. Jensen, based on your committee and your interest in environmental impacts, and I just wanted to get your thoughts a little bit more about from 100 to 50, like going all the way down to the state's number, how you felt about that.
I have trouble with that a bit, quite frankly. But once again, it's going to be a town-managed item, and we will have, as a town, control over how that is done. My thought was allow it to go to 50, but the average dimension has to be 100 yet. That's another way to do it. But by going to the state requirements, it puts us on an equal plane with almost all these others that are going in, is my understanding. So we're not burdening our own property any more than other towns burden theirs.
I was thinking that Joanna did not mention that I think the question was about what other towns are doing, and I didn't think that we got that answer, though.
I don't have specific information from towns that I can quote to you. I wouldn't want to misrepresent in other towns what they've done, but I do know that other towns have taken parts of their UDOs or whatever their ordinances are and adjusted those for certified sites. I don't have any examples for you tonight, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just saying what you were saying, that if we're going to be competitive, then are other folks coming down? Are they doing, I don't know if you can go between 50 and 100, but why do we do 50 unless other towns are doing it and making us more competitive? That's my question.
I had the assumption, and I think I'm right, that other towns, a lot of other towns do not have the 100-foot requirement.
Correct.
That's correct.
That's correct.
That's what I'm trying to get.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, yeah.
Thank
I just
you.
don't have like a specific town I can quote you for this evening.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, like, I need that, I don't know. It would be nice to have that information, I guess.
Anything else on item 1? Okay. The next 2 amendments are from staff, and they're much simpler. The first amendment is in the lighting section, and currently we have a prohibition for illuminated tubing or strings of lights on trees. And so the proposal is to exempt Town of Apex-owned trees, provided that they are not permanently installed and are removed from the tree. And I did not update this slide. It should say the lights are reinstalled or replaced at least twice a year, and that's to prevent damage to the trees. Any questions on that one?
So this exempts the town of Apex from putting lights in trees,
This would allow us to put lights in our trees.
like hanging from the branches, kind of thing, like decorations.
As decorative.
Wrap around the trunk.
Wrap around the trunk or within the trees or hanging from the trees in however manner that, we want to install them. It's not permitted currently.
It's not permitted by anybody
Correct.
to do anything like that, right?
With the exception, there is an exemption for holiday lights. But beyond that, it's not good for, and the reason why we don't allow it is for the health of the tree. If you leave lights strung around a tree, the tree will start to grow around the wires. You could also have a fire hazard as the wires age and could be, frayed. And so that's why we don't allow them to remain or everywhere. And since this would only be on Town of Apex trees, we can ensure that the standard that we've written will be followed, and that the lights will be removed and replaced with care and not just ripped off and further damaging trees.
So is the vision of this like lights in trees in downtown Apex?
That would be a perfect example of the use. Okay. All right, and the final amendment is to one letter, and that's to correct a grammatical error and change affect to effect in this standard. So, go back to 7th grade English and make all of our teachers happy. The planning board unanimously recommended approval of these changes at the August 12th meeting, and staff recommends approval as well. Happy to answer any other questions you might have.
All right, I'll open the public hearing. No one signed up. I'll close the public hearing and further matter to council for possible motion.
I don't have a problem with amendments 2 and 3. Amendment 1 makes me feel uncomfortable, for sure.
All parts of it?
Most parts of it,
Most parts of it.
yes.
I mean, I think Amendment 1 just puts us in a more competitive marketplace with these certified sites that we're trying to bring businesses to Apex. Although I don't like decreasing it from 100 to 50, I do want to still be competitive in the marketplace when people ask us what do we have available in the town of Apex. I think it puts our staff in a good position. Hey, we have these sites and we have these alterations that fit with the state code. We'd love to have your business here.
I just felt I didn't have enough information with that, so I kept asking. I would like to be competitive, but I didn't get the information to show, to make me feel that it was, because I don't think it was answered for me to go from 100 to 50. I would like to have had more information.
Yeah, the 50 is the state standard. Another way to look at it is allow it to go to 50, but have an average of 70 feet or something like that, so that you aren't right on 50 along the whole stream, that you back off. That was another possibility. And maybe the council is interested in something like that.
Could I suggest that maybe we table or continue the first item? I want to talk to our stormwater engineers a little bit about the buffer. My understanding is that we may not be able to hang on to our 100-foot buffer requirement when our NPDES permit renews the next time anyway, per state legislation. But I don't want to state that as absolute fact. I want Marty Stone to state that, and maybe then we can get a little more information to respond to some of these questions. This is not emergent. We're not sitting on go on a deal. So if a member of council would want to allow us to continue that item.
Amendment 1?
Yeah, just the first one. And
the first part of Amendment 1.
So all of Amendment 1
all of Amendment
for the
1.
certified
Okay.
sites, and then we'll provide more information back to council. And then if the other two amendments, if you would consider those for a vote tonight.
Okay. Let me try to do the easy things first, because I like to clear things up and make it simple. So if there's no discussion further on amendments 2 and 3, I would entertain a motion to approve amendments 2 and 3.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve amendments 2 and 3. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that's passed unanimously. So now we can come back to amendment number 1, and I believe we don't necessarily have to vote, but I think, do we? Well, I guess we could, but
You've had the public hearing.
let's go ahead and do it, so we can continue the vote for amendment number 1. All right, so, yes?
Just real quick question. Did this go through environmental committee as well?
No.
I mean, these are environmental concerns.
Do you have a meeting planned?
I can have one.
Okay. Would the council want this to go to environmental committee?
I think it would be good to, get more suggestions, get more further details and information about this, to let the environmental committee come back with a recommendation as well, possible changes or amendments if needed.
Okay, and Mr. Town Manager, you can have staff support that meeting on this topic. Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. Once it's been,
All right.
Whenever it's called, we'll be there.
Okay.
So, just a question for you, I guess. The information about what other municipalities are doing with these certified sites. Do you want the environmental committee to weigh Apex's environmental regulations versus theirs? I mean, that's kind of, I think that's more of an economic issue more than environmental, right? unless we value our buffers more than, maybe we do.
We
with other
do.
municipalities.
Yeah.
We do, as a
Yeah.
matter of fact. And
For me, and I appreciate that, Councilwoman Killingsworth, I'm okay with it not coming to the environmental committee. I just would like to see like where this number comes from. Like, you know, could it have been somewhere between 50 and 100? Like, I just would like to see where that number comes from. And a lot of things the state do, we try to exceed that and do better. So I just want to see where that, I don't have the data where that came from. So just, I would be okay with getting more information and not having another meeting.
As the chairperson, I would like to honor that. And so if council is okay, and Councilwoman
appreciate
Killingsworth, if it's all right with council, then we'll ask the town manager to work with staff to develop a little deeper dive and work with his appropriate members to make a definitive statement on some things. I know you've heard the conversations tonight, so there's some things that can be researched.
Can I request too that if we're going to talk about environmental impacts, I'm not sure this exists, but like, is there some kind of checklist that says the pros and cons at 50 versus 60 versus 75 versus like, I mean, it's hard to judge like what's the right number. I'm not sure. You give up something once you go from 50 to a certain number, and then because we've got to weigh that versus the amounts of the sites that we can develop on with these important sites. So. Yeah, that'd be interesting. I'd be interested not just what other municipalities are doing, but also what the kind of pros and cons at certain levels between 50 and 100 feet.
I think that's a good idea. It's something like parts per million pollutants, because that's going to get better and better with the increase.
I just want to check with the town manager representing your department that will have to find that. Do you believe that's findable or something that
I can't speak.
I can't speak to whether or not it is. I don't have the data. So
well,
all I can do is ask, Mr. Stone and his team.
It can be a request.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I think it's good to know. I know, and I haven't weighed in on this, but I know from history that the 50-foot buffer has always been put forward as the state standard. And anecdotally, I have been told that our standard of 100 feet was, in their words, far exceeded the state standard and was concerning to some people who needed to address it. I understand the purpose of it, and it, in theory, more is better, but it also is good to have data. So I think it's interesting. It would be interesting to know minimally what's the difference between 50 foot and 100 foot. Is it measurable? Is the first 50 feet where 95% of the filtering happens anyway, and another 50 feet makes very little difference? I don't know. Or is it linear? Is it a linear scale? And I think that's the kind of information that might be helpful to understand the difference between 50 foot and 100 foot. And if there's, maybe there's interpolation that can happen in the middle.
Yeah, especially because it's an isolated area, not the whole town too. So
right.
That's another thing too. Is we're only going through right now at least one property sites.
So let's make a formal motion. I don't know who wants to make that. I've heard a few people weighing in, but motion to have town staff.
Or to continue it till?
Yeah, would you continue the vote? All right, so motion.
1 month's enough, right?
1 month?
No, you don't know if you can get that data either.
Well, if we're looking for empirical data, we're going to need 2 months.
2 months?
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
And we're looking for the science of it, yeah.
Right, and since we're not, as you said, I forget your exact words, but there's not an imminent decision riding on this, right, from an economic development standpoint, right today.
Correct.
So if we take 2 months to get the data.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that we continue this Amendment 1 item for 2 months.
Can we get a date?
October 15th.
Thank you.
October what?
15th.
To October 15th to allow staff to do additional research. Can I add, however, if there is something more certain, then come back. Like, don't tell somebody no. Like that, so I don't know how to that's like legalese, right? You like that?
Yeah, I think the idea is let us know if something does pop up,
Yeah.
and we need to make
and we need to move on
Right.
something. We're not, yeah, I want to strike the right balance. I'm not,
There you go.
yeah.
Okay, I think that's fair. So there's your motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until October 15th while staff collects some data to help describe the difference between 50 feet and 100 feet. And this again is for Amendment 1.
Yeah.
Any discussion?
I mean, we're also exempting ourselves basically in this site from doing a tree survey, which we require from everybody else. Is that correct?
The tree survey would still be required within all buffers, so the riparian and perimeter and street front buffers. Basically, the only thing you would not be surveying is wetlands,
Which are protected already, right?
they're protected. We require tree protection fencing to be around wetlands anyway.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion to continue this until October 15th, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Okay, that passes unanimously. That concludes all of our public hearings. And now that takes us to new business number 1. This is updates on the Apex Circulator study. Jenna Schaus is presenting.
Good evening. So I'm going to be providing updates regarding the Apex Circulator study. This map is included as a reference or as a reminder that the Apex Circulator is included in the adopted Advanced Apex Transportation Plan and runs along Highway 55 from Beaver Creek Commons down to the Walmart area. So the purpose and background. So the Apex Circulator study is partially funded through the Wake Transit Plan Community Funding Areas Program, and the Apex Circulator route was identified as a priority project in Advance Apex. And the purpose of this project is to develop a service level transit plan, which includes items such as a term-by-term plan, a fare structure, and a marketing plan, and could result in a potential capital and operating funds application. And these funds could be used to install bus stop improvements and begin operating service along the Apex Circulator. And we've partnered with the town of Cary to receive technical assistance throughout this project, and we're coordinating with the Apex Transit Committee as we do this work. So the scope of this project is outlined here, and we've completed the targeted outreach portion, and right now we're working on the capital and operations plan. And after that, we'll develop a marketing, branding, and customer service plan, and this will be informed by the town's overall branding study that's underway. Then we'll develop a financial plan, and then potentially a capital and operations funding application and draft agreement with the town of Cary. So public input strategy. So we distributed flyers in both Spanish and English to 16 key locations around town. Most of these were along the proposed corridor and at bus stops throughout town. And we held 9 pop-up booths and engaged with over 100 individuals at these events. And then an online survey was released for just over a month, and 484 individuals participated in that survey. Through the pop-up booths and the online survey, we were able to gather input on the proposed route alignment, as well as suggested bus stop locations and preferences regarding bus stop amenities and the route schedule. So we asked people when they would use the service during the day and what days of the week. And then information about the bus fare by asking people what is the highest dollar amount that they would be willing to pay for a one-way trip along the Apex Circulator. And we gathered input on the trip purpose and paratransit service options, so that's service for people with disabilities. So here's a list of the locations where we held pop-up booths. Most of them are along the proposed corridor, and then there are some at popular transit stops in town. And then to the right is a picture of our pop-up booth at the Apex Farmers Market. So what we heard, here's a list of the top 10 bus stop locations that were suggested through the pop-up booths and the online survey. These include Beaver Creek Commons, downtown Apex, Walmart, and Town Campus. For Town Campus, people were specifically asking or wanting to access the Apex Community Center and the future Senior Center, Eva Perry Library, Beaver Creek Crossings, so the theater side of Beaver Creek, the intersection of South Salem Street and NC 55, the South Hughes Street Park and Rides at the Campari Foods, the post office and the Haddon Hall Commons Shopping Center at NC 55 and the Peakway. And then here's a list of the top 5 proposed alignment comments that were submitted through the online survey and at the pop-up events. These include requests to serve downtown Apex and to extend or to provide service along the Apex Peakway, to extend service to the west, so in the Kelly Road and Olive Chapel Road area, and to connect to regional transit services, so Go Triangle routes that connect to downtown Raleigh and RTP, and also had comments to connect to Cary and the Go Cary transit system overall.
Are these in order of popularity?
Yes, these ones are. Both of those, both these slides are.
Okay.
So using that input, we were able to address all of those comments with the exception of the one to provide service to the Eva Perry Library, because we wanted to balance the length of the transit route with the frequency of service. But the Eva Perry Library will receive all-day service, or it's anticipated to receive all-day service through Go Triangle Route 305, which serves Apex and Raleigh, and that's anticipated to begin in fiscal year 2021. And we'll connect to this route as well. So I'll walk through the proposed route. So it would start at Town Campus and travel along Laura Duncan Road to the Apex Peakway, and then north along Highway 55 to Beaver Creek Commons Drive, and then south along Kelly Road and Olive Chapel Road to serve the Publix Point area, and then turn around here at the Western Wake Crisis Ministry, and then back along Olive Chapel Road and Kelly Road and Beaver Creek Commons Drive to NC 55, and continue to travel south along NC 55 to the Apex Peakway to serve the Walmart, and then along the Peakway to Tingen Road and James Street, and back north along 55 to South Salem Street to serve downtown Apex, and then along East Chatham Street and back on North Mason Street to serve Town Hall.
So what's the strategy behind turning around there at the Publix area versus connecting like Olive Chapel all the way through? Is it, I guess, to serve people who are going to get on there to go back like toward the shopping center?
We extended it along Olive Chapel because we heard specific requests from clients and people who work at the Western Wake Crisis Ministry that they would like the circulator to serve there.
Right. But versus going all the way to 55 from Olive Chapel, is there
to extend this way?
Yeah, versus going back through. What's the strategy there?
Well, I think that kind of also gets to the length versus frequency.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that we can still serve at least hourly service. And when we tested this, it was about 40 minutes. Is that right? Is that what you found?
Yeah, and there's one more reason, and Jen is correct, but it also addresses that issue of passenger entry on one side of the bus, so we need to be going down in both directions.
Okay. Was that for in the previous one for bus stops to be only on one side, or is it just the crossing of streets is unsafe, or both? Okay.
So what's next? We're going to continue to coordinate with the Apex Transit Committee throughout this process, and then complete the capital and operations plan, which we're currently working on, and then go through the following steps in the scope, and we'll be back this fall to present final recommendations. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
And just to be clear for everyone, this is an informational presentation, so there's no vote. It's just an opportunity to get up to date and see if you have questions.
You said it was 40 minutes without stopping, or with simulated stops?
We didn't stop, but we were stopped by the train for a few minutes. so that like was a real life situation.
Okay, so 40 minutes probably turns into an hour when there's people getting on and off, I guess, roughly, maybe.
Yep. So based on our test run with Town Care staff and Russell, Jenna, and I, we anticipate that this draft route, it still needs to go to the transit committee before we seek your approval, would result in an hourly frequency. So approximately 40 minutes, add a little bit for stops. We drove at the speed limit, exactly. And then we need to account for a layover time for the driver for each run.
Okay.
I like what I'm seeing so far.
All right, thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
All right, having reached the end of that, that takes us to our closed session item. I'd like to ask for a motion to consult with the town attorney regarding Town of Apex v. Rubin and Torres v. Town of Apex. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to go into closed session. Any conversation? Discussion? All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, we're now going into closed session and let the public be aware that we have no further items to discuss in open meetings tonight. Thank you.
I never hot. I slept in the bathroom.
Yeah, y'all like me though, because that's exactly what I'm going to say. I'd like to want It's true. It's like,
You like that Mendoza line? I wasn't even thinking about you when I said it. It's just
That's a good one, man.
Just the first
I don't
thing.
know the story on Mendoza though.
Do you know what that is? Oh,
It's 200, sub 200 batting average.
That's right.
Was he like habitually below it?
there was a baseball player whose final career at
No, I heard
retirement, his
about
batting
it.
average was 200 exactly.
Was it?
And so it became a thing when people would say, if somebody's struggling,
Yeah.
you
No,
know,
I'm familiar with
he's
the term.
below the Mendoza line so far this season. He's hoping he will climb out of that. So that, I think that was the name of the player. And I think his career batting average is like 200 on the dot. All right, we got everybody? Councilman Gant, and then we'll gather and adjourn. So having reached the end of our agenda, thank you very much for coming tonight. We are adjourned.
Cheers. Do we not have the number of vehicles or the number of?
How late is Southern Peak open?
Or so I hear.
10?
I think 10. 10.
There should be. Got to kind of hurry down there. Is there something happening? Be on 4 and something.